This is a relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
You know, one of the best parts about this show is the audience. Matter of fact, the audience, unquestionably the best part about this show, right? I mean, that's you. I want to thank you right now for checking out this episode of Real Talk, but you're about to meet an audience member. You're about to meet somebody that saw our episode on July 17th when I was talking to Dr. Paul Parks, president of the Alberta Medical Association. That episode is called Alberta's Healthcare Crisis Explained. And Dr. Parks took us through a bunch of the challenges that Albertans, but not exclusively, that Canadians are experiencing when it comes to healthcare delivery, availability across the nation. Many of you may have had a tough time finding a family doctor. Some of you may be on surgical wait lists that are months or even years long. But what's the solution? All of a sudden, we're checking our email inbox and we hear from this fella. He's barely into his mid-20s, and he's already making an incredible impact at the university that he's studying at, in the world around him, so much so that Forbes magazine just featured him a couple of months ago. We're going to introduce you to Pulkit Kumar coming up in just a second. But first, I want to let you know that this episode is happening with the presenting sponsorship of Business Career College, and they've got a focused message for those of you right now that are working as financial advisors. If you're a senior financial professional, if you're working in finance and you want to learn more about digital assets, decentralized finance, you're going to want to check out their CDAA. That's the Certified Digital Asset Advisor designation. You can check it out online at businesscareercollege.com. You know, more than 75%, like 3 out of 4 of the new generation of investors are interested in adding digital assets to their financial portfolios. They got questions about Bitcoin and blockchain and NFTs and everything. And you want to be able to advise your clients effectively, right? You want to future-proof your own career. Check out the CDAA, Certified Digital Asset Advisor designation at Business Career College. Because you're hearing about this on Real Talk, the promo code Ryan20, all one word, means you'll have a 20% discount on the course. That's Ryan20 when you get started today at businesscareercollege.com. What a pleasure it is to welcome Pulkit Kumar to the studio, a medical student, a researcher, a healthcare innovator, currently at the University of Alberta, and a real talker at that. It's great to have you in studio. Thanks for making time for us.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much, Ryan. Thank you. It's an absolute pleasure sitting here talking to you.
It was
Thanks for having me.
It was so cool to hear from you, because I know that you're talking right now to people that are interested in learning more and understanding more about the world around them and impacting the world around them. And you certainly qualify relatively early in your career, but you're already making a lot of noise. Congratulations on the Forbes feature back in May. That must have been exciting.
Oh, thank you so much. Oh, yeah, it was certainly exciting when I received the email from this editor and reporter from Forbes. I was excited. Felt like, I have seen an impact. I have done something, not much, but something. A contribution is a contribution. So it was pretty exciting. And yeah, I mean, age-wise, you can say, yes, I'm a little young, but my body feels old. It has started to hurt already. But yeah, I don't feel like it's about the age. It's whenever you get a chance to show your passion to the world. And if you do something you like, people will look up to you. People will follow you. People will get in touch with you. And people will like you. You just have to be yourself. That's what I believe in.
A likable guy. We were just seeing on our screen as well a feature in a local magazine, Edify. You were named as one of the edifiers in your community this year, which is, I think, a badge of honor as well. Obviously, people are paying attention to what you're doing. You're an Indian-born, New Jersey-raised, Alberta-based researcher and surgical master's in surgery student. Is that proper? Did I follow that properly?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, quite a timeline. Yeah, I was born in India. I was born in the state of Punjab, which is close to Pakistan, and then spent the first few years of my life in New Delhi. And then my family moved to New Jersey, where I did my middle schooling and high schooling. And then I came to Alberta, specifically Edmonton.
So you've seen 3 different healthcare systems at work.
That is true. Yeah. So starting from India, my mom, she's a family doctor, and so in India, what it like used to be when I was growing up was the fact that if you have money, you'll get a 5-star treatment. So in the sense that they'll treat you like as if you were living in a hotel. But let's say if you don't have money, you would be laying on the ground. They won't even have beds for you. And so that was something which I was exposed to when I was 6 or 7. My mom, she used to go to the hospital, and every time I walked by in the hallway of the hospital, I used to see people lying on the ground. It was concerning. To a 7-year-old boy, I always used to look up to my mom and was like, Mom, why aren't they on the beds? She was like, we don't have any more beds. And so it was that early that I started thinking, there is some issues that we need to address. But I couldn't really do anything. I was only 7. And then I started growing up. I started reading more about these healthcare disparities, and then my family moved to New Jersey. And even in the American healthcare system, when I moved to New Jersey or to the United States, Barack Obama, he was the president, loved by everyone, as we all know. Amazing guy. But the healthcare system of the United States was pretty similar to that of India. So if you have good amount of money, or if you can afford healthcare insurance, you're good. You can afford any sort of surgery or any sort of healthcare treatment. But was that the case with everyone? No. And then again, I was still studying. I was organizing all these camps in my high school. I was doing all the research to just know why this is happening. And it has to do with the socioeconomic status of the people, has to do with the immigrant status, has to do with if people consider healthcare insurance as a priority in their list. But then I came to Canada, and here everything is free. The only downside of it is that, you have to wait a little bit. But here in Canada, like, people look up to us. When I say us, I mean Canada. People look up to us in terms of healthcare. People look up to us in the sense that Canada is a leader in healthcare. I was having a chat with one of the journalists at New York Times, and he was like, hey, people look up to Canada when it comes to healthcare. And the state of West Virginia is doing something similar now. So if you're in West Virginia now, you don't have to really pay for your health insurance. You will get free treatment regardless of who you are, which is crazy, right? So people are getting inspiration from us. But the issue, what I faced was the wait times, as well as when I came here, I was diagnosed with something called major depressive disorders, or MDD. I worked with a psychiatrist, Dr. Adam Abaji. He said, hey, would you like to shadow me for a couple months? I was like, yeah, sure, why not? When I was shadowing him, let's say if you are the doctor and the patient is sitting here and I'm sitting here, what I used to see more often than not was patients were going through adverse side effects. So if the antidepressants were prescribed to them, they were working. The patients were feeling good. But I remember this one person who came in with his mom. His mom was like, hey, my son hasn't slept in 7 days or 14 days. And I was like, that's crazy. She's like, but he feels good. He just hasn't slept in 14 days. And his appetite is so bad. So I was like, okay, the antidepressants are working, but they are messing up his other bodily functions. So I was like, okay, you know what? This is something that I can address or I can talk about, which led me to publish my first paper when I was 19. I published my first paper talking about the healthcare disparities, or why are physicians only focusing on one thing and not holistically treating the patients.
I'm curious for you. You and I have spoken a little bit off camera, and I want to bring the audience into this to sort of help understand what's motivating the work that you're doing in healthcare. You're certainly, and you've been celebrated and presented as a healthcare innovator, and you've got your fingers in a number of different pies. You're co-founder of the University of Alberta Cancer Society. You're the founder of the Service Over Self Foundation, where you look to address healthcare disparities in low to middle income countries. And obviously we've talked a little bit about that to this point, but you have Yeah, I mean, you come into this with kind of like a holistic view of healthcare. You're looking at the entire system at a relatively early stage in your career, which is really interesting as an outsider to see when you hear Canadians talk about the broken healthcare system. And there are people in positions of authority, like presidents of medical associations, provincial medical associations, as an example, high-profile political leaders, as another example. Do you agree? Do you see evidence that the healthcare system in Canada is broken? What's your assessment?
So I would say broken is more of an extreme word, like quote unquote broken. I mean, there's a reason the system is in place. And there's a reason people look up to us. To say it is broken might not be fair. To say we can better it is more so is something I would agree with. Bettering in the sense that, for instance, when I was working with the Office of Global Surgery, we had this project called the RSONA project, the Rural Surgical Obstetrical Networks of Alberta. Why was that project started? The project was started because people had to drive 2 to 3 hours just to come to Edmonton to get basic surgery. Was that really feasible? I don't think so. We don't think so. So we started off this project wherein we'll be training family doctor residents with something called ESS, so enhanced surgical skills, and OSS, obstetrical surgical skills. And we'll be sending them off to rural Alberta, wherein they'll be looking at and they'll be treating patients with all sorts of surgeries so that they don't have to drive 2 to 3 hours just to come to Edmonton, which is going to decrease the surgical wait times in big cities. By big cities, I mean Edmonton and Calgary. So when people say it is broken, I don't think that's a fair word to use. I just think there's some missing parts that we need to focus on in order to better the system.
Yeah, when you wrote to us a pretty compelling introductory message, these are the messages that make what we do worthwhile, by the way, and we were pretty chuffed about it. But you say that gap between, in Canada, what doctors believe patients experience and what patients actually experience drove me to change the way that healthcare is delivered, both in Canada and across the world. There are people in pretty high-profile positions trying to figure out ways to make healthcare systems, multi-billion-dollar healthcare systems, more efficient and more effective, and everybody's got their ideas. We hear recurring themes of bloated middle management and inefficiencies and low morale. Obviously, we hear of some spillover impact that the pandemic continues to have, both with healthcare providers and with the system. What are some of the areas, generally speaking, that you identify based on your observations where you think that meaningful tweaks or adjustments could be made to improve healthcare delivery in Canada?
Excellent question. So I'm just gonna share a short story. While I was part of the U of A Cancer Society, we went to rural Alberta, wherein we visited a family who had someone diagnosed with cancer, and the patient, the person who was suffering with cancer, was just cornered in one room. And, we asked, why was this the case? And they were like, hey, we thought cancer is airborne. I don't know who told them, but when I say gaps, this is what I mean.
This is the family that thought this?
Yeah. Cancer is airborne. So we're just going to keep the person in a corner. I'm like, no, that's not how it goes. When I asked who told them about you, they were a little hesitant, so I'm not sure who told them, but I'm assuming they must have read it on internet.
Facebook,
Yeah.
So this is what, their first consult? They're coming into this with low information?
Exactly. And I'm like, okay, what's something we can do to address this change? So what we can do is that we can introduce them to scientific papers. We can introduce them to latest research. But introducing scientific papers to non-scientific audience is again a challenge. So if you want to introduce critical reading, if you want to introduce critical thinking, you need to remove scientific jargon. And then tell them, hey, you read this. This is the latest research. Cancer is not airborne. That person needs your support. That person needs your love and nourishment in order to recover.
Do you see yourself as like ultimately you're what 24 right now?
Yeah.
Is that right? Yeah. And you're do you not prefer when people point out your age, by the way?
Oh no, I'm okay with that.
There was just a body language change. I wonder, some young people that are high achievers, I sometimes wonder if they'd prefer that people not point out that they're in the early stage of their career. But do ultimately, so you're a master's in surgery student right now. Ultimately, where do you see yourself like career-wise? Like, do you see yourself as a surgeon? Do you see yourself as a healthcare executive? Do you see yourself as a founder and an entrepreneur? Ultimately, where would you see your journey taking you?
In 2022, early 2022, I was introduced with Dr. Abdullah Saleh. He's the director of the Office of Global Surgery. And to be very honest, I've never seen someone like him. He's so secure, the way he speaks. I've learned so much from him. He's a surgeon himself. He's a pediatric trauma surgeon. And I've always wanted a mentor in my life. And I found him, and I was very, very happy. And the way he motivated me is something I cannot explain in words. So when it comes to career-wise, of course, I see myself as a surgeon. But on the same side, in parallel, I also see myself as an entrepreneur, focusing on bettering people's life, whether it's in Canada or people in LMICs. Why am I focusing on LMICs?
You're talking about low middle income countries.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Just to be clear,
No.
low to mid income countries. Yeah. Why am I focusing on that? Why not just in Canada? Because I feel like it is our responsibility. If we claim we are the leaders in healthcare, it is our responsibility to look after people or countries who don't have resources.
The reason I ask about your age and your career aspirations is I wonder, sometimes storytelling, broadcasting, talk shows would be another example, where we look to the next generation. Content creators, a lot of people talking about, these days. And we sort of think, what will the next generation of professionals do? How different will their attitudes be? How different will their approach be? Yeah. And here I'm talking to, a member of, the next generation of healthcare providers, of surgeons, of impact makers and change makers in the field. Do you look around you, and if I've known you now for 10 minutes, I suspect that you'll probably be careful in how you answer this question for fear of insulting any of your mentors or anything like that. But do you notice demonstrable difference between the existing professionals now and the class that's coming in, fellow medical students and the like? Do you see a significant, a noticeable difference in how a previous generation and your generation is approaching healthcare?
Oh, for sure, I do. And I don't think I'll be offending anyone when I say this, because people who are retiring or close to retiring, they have a different sort of attitude. They have a different values. They have a different belief system. But people who are coming now, they are more empathetic. That's what I've felt. That's what I've seen. They're more empathetic. They're more understanding. They're more accepting of other people, if that makes sense. Accepting in the sense that I don't care who you are. I don't care how you identify. I don't care about your socioeconomic status. I don't care how you look like. My job is to treat you, and that's what I'm going to do.
So you have obviously a lot going on right now. You're focusing a lot on rural Alberta and how rural Albertans interact with the Canadian healthcare system. And one of the obvious things, whether you're talking to politicians or practitioners, is a lack of talent, not with the existing professionals, but a lack of available talent. The talent pool is shallow. Staffing is obviously a huge concern, and that applies everywhere in the big urban centers, but I think that it's rural Albertans are acutely aware of this. You're talking about these bold and ambitious ways to redirect surgeries and to relieve wait times in the big cities and to staff up. Do you think that's possible? There's evidence all around us that young people are looking at careers in healthcare right now. The morale issue, I think, is factoring in. I think some young people are choosing maybe alternative careers, people with promising and bright futures, because they're looking at it and they're not quite sure that the sacrifice is worth it. They're not quite sure that they're up for that challenge. Have you seen, as much as is reasonable for you to observe around you, issues relating to a talent pool, recruitment of young professionals and the like? Is that something that's been on your radar?
That has been, and me and my lab mates, we talk about it all the time, actually. The idea is that the requirements to get into medical school, they are so high up that people are like, you know what? I don't think it's worth it. I might as well invest my time in somewhere else. But the idea is, it is worth it. If you get into medical school, everything is going to be worth it. And so even though I'm 24 and people younger than me are already in medical school, I still feel like, what I'm doing, even though I'm not in medical school, I'm still making an impact. I'm still doing it. And ultimately, the question then just comes to the government or the administrators. Hey, are you going to ease up on the rules to get into medical school? Are you gonna, everyone has talent. Like if you're
a tough look, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like nobody wants the cardiac surgeon that like barely got into medical school.
Exactly. Yeah. And your requirements are so high up that it takes people years and years to, even qualify to the interview stage. And so what many universities are now doing, for instance, Queen's University, what they're now doing is doing random 500. So if you have written the MCAT, if you have taken the Casper exam, if you have graduated with a certain GPA, you'll randomly get an invitation for an interview. I don't know if that's the best method, but that's what they are doing. And more medical schools are now looking at mature applicants who have a sense of direction, a sense of thinking, applicants who have contributed in some form of the other in understanding the community and understanding the people at the grassroots level. This is another reason why I do this kind of stuff, is because I want to talk to people, I want to engage with them, I want to understand them at the grassroots level. Only then I can make the change at the systems level.
Yeah. Most people will hear this on the podcast, not see it on YouTube. I just want to say it out loud. When you talk, you beam. Like you smile, you smile when you talk. You change you move in the chair when you're talking about what you're doing. Like it's very obvious that you care deeply about this. Hey, exactly. Is that a safe thing to say, that this is more than something like a practical career choice for you? This is something. Do you feel called to medicine?
For sure. And it started off pretty early. Like
how much of that had to do with your mom?
A lot.
Yeah.
A lot. She has been an inspiration. And you talk about my mom, I look at all the women out there who are doing such an amazing work, and they don't get the credit they deserve. They're such good managers at pretty much everything. Like my mom, was she a surgeon or a family practitioner? A family practitioner.
Family doctor, just like my dad.
Yeah. So what she does is she's very awesome at her job. She look after her patients, and then she comes back home. And I remember when my brother was really, really young, she used to look after him as well, because we didn't have any nanny. For some reason, my family doesn't like the concept of having a nanny at home. So she used to come back from her practice and she used to look after my younger brother. And that was such an inspiration for me. And at the age of 35, 37, she did her second master's while taking care of the family. And it's such an inspiration. And so many other women and so many other moms might be doing the same thing. And if you want, I can just talk about Trump a little bit.
Whoa! Where did that? Sure. No. After we talk to you, we're going to be taking a look at I'm sure you're aware of, here's a little timestamp on this episode, but while we're talking to Pulkit last night, the Obamas took the stage at the Democratic National Convention and spoke a lot about Donald Trump. That's hilarious that you just jumped there. I'm assuming you're going to tie this to a story to do with your family, but you were in New Jersey. You would have been in New Jersey when Donald Trump was elected president, right?
That was true.
Okay, I interrupted your train of thought. I can't wait to hear where you take this.
No. The thing was, we were talking about women and how they're such awesome people, how they're such awesome at managing things. And then when I was in New Jersey, in 2015, it was the election season, and I was like, you know what? We want Hillary Clinton. We want a female, a woman, a madam president. And I was so excited. There's finally a woman who has come up to the top, and our family was rooting for her. And we would have people with Trump 2016 posters running around us, and that scared me a little bit, especially the part when Trump said so much worse things about women. And I feel like, hey, Trump, you are 70 plus years old. You need to mature up. Like, is this what politics has come down to? Name calling women? Even to Kamala Harris, is this what politics has come down to? Name calling her or Nancy Pelosi? In politics, I don't feel like you should do personal attacks. It should be about policies. And that's why I feel like America right now is in a direction which is a little concerning to me. If you're still,
You're a U.S. citizen, aren't you?
I am.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it is very concerning. Like even right now, it's an election season, and my family, my dad, he tells me every second day, hey, these people come up to me and they're very aggressive and they're not empathetic, and they talk like, that it is their country. But America was built on the foundation that, hey, we don't care where you are coming from, or we don't care who you are, as long as you identify yourself as American. And the difference between US and Canada is that, hey, Canada says, hey, we don't care who you are and where you come from, you're bringing your culture in here. America is not a multicultural country. You go into the US, you have to identify yourself as an American. Keep your cultures aside. Adapt the American culture.
I didn't think I'd be talking U.S. politics with you at all. But
no, this is something that I've experienced. So I just wanted to, since we were on the topic.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you sharing it. Do you have a gut insight? I see some people, Justin, in our live chat, as soon as you said Trump, he said future President Trump. And,
right.
and then Tony fires back and says future inmate Trump. And people are going back and forth on that. And we can talk about that and we can get into that. But I'm just curious to pick, do you have a gut instinct just as an American? Do you have a gut instinct on which way this is going to go? The race changed, obviously, when Joe Biden dropped out, big time. Now the question is, can the Democrats maintain that momentum? I think it's 76 days today that we're talking, 76 days away from the election. Do you think that the Harris ticket can win this one, or do you think Trump's heading back to the White House? What does your gut tell you?
I watched DNC day 1 and day 2. And the way everyone was speaking, they felt pretty confident. I feel like it's going to be pretty close. Initially, when Joe Biden was running on the ticket, I had a feeling Trump was going to win.
100% Trump
by
was
a
going to
landslide.
Win. By
actually.
a landslide.
And after he had this assassination attempt, I don't know, like, it just jumped off his rating. His rating was just off the charts.
Yeah.
But now I feel like it's going to be pretty close. Obviously, my vote is going to be with Kamala Harris. Because I feel like we need a women president. It's high time now.
Before we go, and I have a sense, I mean, you just kind of strike me as somebody that we're going to be hearing about for a long time, and who knows, maybe we'll have you back on the show as you're talking about one of your innovations as well. I'll let people know they can follow you as under Positive Pulkit on Instagram. You got like 500,000 followers on Instagram, buddy. What's going on there? Look at
Almost
that.
everyone is from South Asia. So.
Hey, man, audience is audience, and people are fascinated in what you're doing. I see you've got your Edify post there when you were named as an edifier, and just really neat stuff, the impact you're making on your community. It's funny, like we haven't even spent any time talking about the work that you're doing developing. Is this a spinal board that's going to help doctors stretch the spine of individuals who have suffered a spinal injury that you believe can save people from paralysis?
It's a very amazing project. This was
we could have led with that. We could have been talking about that for 20 minutes.
Of course, yeah.
We
could have talked about pretty
24
much
years old, man.
Exactly. So the spine was developed by Dr. Richard Fox, who's a neurosurgeon here at the University of Alberta, and it's again a project that is affiliated with the Office of Global Surgery. So what SpineBoard does is that, let's say if you have a disc dislocation, in the sense that if this is your spinal cord, if this is dislocated like that, what we can do is we can put you on this spinal board. We can have a halo attachment go right into your skull. It looks painful, and it might be just a little bit, not that much. So we'll have a halo going right into your skull, and we'll have you lay down on that board, and we'll use like a rotating thing, which will stretch your spine. And if there's a dislocation, and when there is a dislocation, it's going to stretch your spine, and boom, your spine is aligned again. It can save you from paralysis.
And this isn't even your main thing.
No.
Your main thing is part of your Masters of Surgery. You're developing a drug to reduce post-surgery inflammation in type 1 diabetes patients.
That is true.
That's your main squeeze.
That is. When it comes to academics, yes, that is my main squeeze. I work on treating diabetes through surgical care. So what we are doing, what I'm currently looking at, is the fact that when I use human islets are cells that produce insulin. When I use human islets and transplant them into animal models, more often than not, they reject. Why they reject? Because those cells are foreign body, and body doesn't like foreign body. And so what body does, it causes inflammation and kills those cells. But I'm working with a drug that is called necrostatin 1. It's a inflammation inhibitor drug. So the hypothesis is that if I transplant the drug with those cells, it's going to reduce the inflammation and not reject those cells. And in the long run, you won't even need a shot of insulin. That's kind of like my goal.
Do you ever like sit and just stream Netflix for like 8 hours and watch like the dumbest shows ever made?
I don't have time. I'm sorry.
I didn't figure. We're lucky to have people like you that are committing their life's work to being productive and making change in their communities. Pulkit, it's like just you're a very impressive person. I'm just thrilled to welcome you to studio. We make a concerted effort when there's somebody that has a connection with the show, that's making an impact in the world around them, that's inspired by a previous interview that we've had, that reaches out to us, that says, I'd love to come on and talk to us. You sent us this email the day after we talked to Dr. Parks, and we've been working to get you on ever since. It's a pleasure to connect with you. I think it reiterates that there's reason for positivity, there's reason for optimism. That doesn't mean that we ignore the issues and the challenges and the problems in the systems around us. But we don't want this show to be one that's constantly negative, that's constantly, that you can perpetuate a cycle where you start talking about a broken and disastrous healthcare system, right? A bloated and inefficient healthcare system. That's not to say that we shouldn't strive for more efficiency.
Exactly.
But what we try to remember, and what Dr. Parks reiterated on that July 17th episode of the show as well, is that the people that comprise that healthcare system, by and large, are remarkable professionals doing amazing work, and you are one of them, the next gen, so to speak. And I can't wait to see what you continue to achieve and accomplish in the years to come. Thank you so much for what you're doing, and thanks for making some time to come talk about it on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Thank you. It really means a lot.
You bet. Audience, that's on Twitter, that's on Instagram. You can find Pulkit at Positive Pulkit, and we'll link to those handles in the show notes on the podcast and on YouTube. And keep in touch with us, will you?
Sounds good.
Yeah,
Thank
man,
you.
we'd love that. That's Pulkit Kumar, a real talker, and of course, making an amazing impact in the world around him in healthcare. Let us know what you think about this interview to talk@ryanjesperson.com. This interview doesn't happen without the support of Real Talk partners like our friends at Friesen Brothers. You can find them online at friesen.com, and I wanted to put something specific on your radar. Friesen Brothers is proud to support the community of Jasper. Of course, you know that there's one of their locations, a Friesen Brothers location nearby in Hinton, Alberta, in the gateway to the Canadian Rockies there on Highway 16. And Friesen Brothers has always felt a connection to the mountain town of Jasper. Right now, they're helping raise funds. In fact, they're matching donations in support of the Jasper Volunteer Fire Brigade. Next time you're in a Friesen Brothers, any of the 17 locations across the province of Alberta, you let them know at the till that you'd like to make a $5 donation to the Jasper Volunteer Fire Brigade, and Friesen Brothers will match that up to $50,000. All of the funds going directly to the Jasper Volunteer Fire Brigade. That's Friesen Brothers, all about community, Alberta grown and Alberta owned. Well, Johnny, also, we talk about Tice Automotive Consulting every Monday on the show. They present Charles Adler on the show. But I wanted to mention this midweek as well. Typically on Wednesdays, we're talking about Jasper. Our friends at Tice Automotive Consulting know that many, many Jasper residents are going to be looking to replace the vehicles that they lost in that fire. And you know how Tice works. We've explained it in past, right? You tell them what you're looking to buy. What's your sort of dream vehicle? What is your budget going to allow for, whether that's new or gently used, and then they go find it for you. They'll bring it right to your place. They'll deliver it. White glove service. Well, Tice is now discounting their flat fees. They price it out. It's all easy to follow at ticeautomotive.com. 50% off for all Jasper residents. They want to make this process as easy as possible for you as you start to get your life back together. If vehicle replacement is one of the things on your list and you've been a displaced Jasper resident, check out ticeautomotive.com. 50% off all services for Jasper residents. That's Tice Automotive Consulting. At California Closets, if you're looking to get organized, if you're looking to declutter and finally be proud of your personal space, whether that's a dream walk-in closet or a dream garage, they can do it. And it all starts with a free consultation at californiaclosets.ca. This is the best team in the business, and they're experts at working with your vision and working with your budget. And don't forget, everything they come up with is guaranteed for life. You can request that free consultation today at californiaclosets.ca. Appreciate seeing the Real Talk live chat. It's a pretty serious response to what Pulkit was bringing to the table there. This guy, 24 years of age, is just doing an unbelievable job. Obviously taking note of the healthcare system around him, where the breakdowns are, where the positives are, and really applying his learnings and allowing that to drive him forward. I just totally appreciate that. Doesn't it feel good as well to know that people listening to this show are people that are making a huge change in the world around them? Just amazing. The DNC, he mentioned, the Democratic National Convention, is underway as obviously those backing Kamala Harris for president looking to continue and sustain this momentum that campaign has seen. And that started just a few hours before we're producing this talk show with addresses on stage from the former First Lady, Michelle Obama, and the former President, Barack Obama, who took aim at, of course, his nemesis while in office, safe to say, President Donald Trump. I guess you'd accurately describe him as his successor as well. And a couple of shots across the bow from 44. Check this out.
The people who will decide this election are asking a very simple question. Who will fight for me? Who's thinking about my future? About my children's future, about our future together? One thing is for certain, Donald Trump is not losing sleep over that question. Here's a 78-year-old billionaire who has not stopped whining about his problems since he rode down his golden escalator 9 years ago. It has been a constant stream of gripes and grievances that's actually been getting worse now that he's afraid of losing to Kamala. There's the childish nicknames, the crazy conspiracy theories, this weird obsession with crowd sizes. It just goes on and on.
So there's Barack Obama last night with a shot across the bow. It seems like everybody's obsessed with crowd sizes, though, but it is something that Trump talks about a lot.
he's like always like, he's like, they're using AI to make the crowds bigger, and I get what Obama's saying there, but man, not the greatest president. A lot of things he did I didn't agree with. But
Barack Obama?
I just miss the speech tactician, the guy who just nailed it every time, never stumbled through his words, always had an answer for everything, didn't avoid questions. I just feel like the politicians we have today, as soon as you ask them a question, they 180 and they turn it into something else. He was always pretty direct and just a masterful speaker. And
you know what one of his real skills is too, is that he, just like every other politician, 180s on the questions. You just don't realize he's doing it. Like, he's such a good public speaker. And I was thinking that last night.
He's really great. But can we talk about the DJ they had last night?
Okay,
DJ Cassidy.
Take us into this. So this is so Johnny's showing us, for those that are listening to the podcast right now. We were getting an image from the DNC last night. So and this is obviously something you, as a professional DJ, your alter ego Johnny Infamous.
I think it's great that there's a mom out there who can finally say proudly, my son is a DJ, because this guy was awesome. And he's you've obviously have people taking shots at him on Twitter and whatever, but you also,
what are people taking shots at him for? I wasn't
that
watching
there's a DJ one there and whatever. What? But it was great. So they had each person who came out to speak or who was introduced, he would play like a song from their state. It was great. And so me as a DJ, I was like, man, this guy is nailing it. Someone from St. Louis comes out, he plays Nelly. But it was just great how they included something cool like this into it, because I think this is another thing. We got to keep the younger generation involved in politics, and this was just something where, I just love when DJs are getting credit. You know, DJs are always getting flack online. Oh, you're a DJ. This is huge for a DJ to be at the Democratic National Convention. This is insane.
I love that this is the whole storyline. This is an angle that I would not have picked up on, but obviously, and this has been a big part of your career, but I had no idea people were cracking on him, but you hit the nail on the head about
people always crack on DJs. It's not a real job. You know, you're not really, what are you doing?
These are people
you're just pressing play. You're not an artist, all these things. And there's a spectrum of DJs. You know, some people just play songs. Some people are very technical. Some people are absolute wizards. Like you wonder how they're doing that, right? But I just thought it was a nice ad. But in general, I went back and watched, you know, I watched the Republican stuff too, but I watched the DNC, a lot of the clips, and then went back and used some of my apps on my TV to watch specific parts. But yeah, it just when the Obamas come out, I mean, I think everybody kind of still pines for the Obama days when they came out, and just, you know, they're just they give you that feeling, that sense of calm when they're on stage. They, you know, they like politicians make me so anxious, and the Obamas always like calm me down. I feel like I could, you know, use the Calm app with Obama, and he'd get me to sleep at night. You know what I mean? No matter what he's talking about. Well, again, policies aside, all that other stuff, what you think of him as a president, I just think delivery, speech, you know, nowadays we've got, like I said, we had Trump and Biden just fumbling their words, and Obama comes out there and just nails everything, right? It's just, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and whether or not you, first of all, I don't even know how to respond to your whole thing on DJs. I didn't realize the DJs get cracked on. So that's not
gosh,
been on my
have
radar.
you been on TikTok lately?
But this is all about. But this is all. It's all about, like, a big part of these conventions. Obviously, is to build the hype, to build the momentum.
Delivery.
They bring out, you know, obviously the Obamas endorsed Kamala last night, obviously, and we'll hear from others now. And like, you know, a big part of these conventions is sort of like trying to take that momentum into the final sort of like 2.5 months of these campaigns for the Republicans and the Democrats, and try to create and then sustain that momentum. And they're talking big time about the swing states, right? These are obviously, like, a lot of states are kind of, you know, it was interesting hearing Pulkit like talk to us before he came on the show this morning, just waiting in our green room, and he was talking about the, you know, the sort of the contrast of growing up in New Jersey. He said, you know, in New Jersey, you kind of never knew what you're going to get with elections. It would flip flop, blue red, blue red. He goes, New York was just always kind of blue. There's different states that will obviously factor into this one big time, and watching the convention. You know, the big question is can the Democrats maintain this momentum that they've seen with the Harris ticket right now? Can you tee up the Kamala Harris? We pulled this. This was over the weekend, so I want to let
the
people
clip?
know this was a few days ago.
Yeah.
We didn't get around to using it. We've spent so much time talking about the Senate of Canada over the past couple of days, and Charles Adler, that we haven't really talked about our American friends and neighbors. But this was Kamala Harris just the other day. This is her over the weekend, and what I thought was interesting about this is making a conscious choice. This is a conscious decision, obviously, on her messaging, and from her and her team, I'm sure, to present themselves still as the underdog. Here's what she had to say.
As a new poll shows that you're 3 points up nationally. What's your response to this? Do you still consider yourself the underdog here?
I very much consider us the underdog. We have a lot of work to do to earn the vote of the American people. That's why we're on this bus tour today, and we're going to be traveling this country as we've been, and talking with folks, listening to folks, and hopefully earning their votes over the next 79 days.
So that was her in Pennsylvania a few days ago. I think you always want to be the underdog, right?
Yeah.
Like nobody, whether
That's
it's
the
sports or
storyline.
politics, you don't want to be the favorite.
No.
You know, and so, yeah, this will be obviously an interesting one to see, and we'll continue to bring you developments there. We're always curious to you know, get your thoughts on this. By the way, we're getting a lot of comments, a lot of love from the DJs here, Johnny, in the live chat. James says, I don't know, Johnny says, I thought the DJ during an otherwise boring portion of that convention was a brilliant choice. So James loved it with you and thought that was good. But a lot of times there are people that, you know, you're going to be listening to this show and you're paying attention to what's happening in the U.S. and maybe there's an angle or a storyline or an issue as a Canadian that's of interest to you. You know, maybe it's something to do with free trade. Maybe it's something to, you know, do with water rights. Maybe it's something to do with that relationship that we share with the Americans. We always love hearing from you. It deepens our understanding of what the audience is interested in talking about, and can put new issues on our radar as well as we produce these shows on a daily basis. Talk at ryanjesperson.com is where you can find us. We also, of course, paying attention to political developments. It seems like a bit of a sleepy time-ish right now, provincially and federally speaking. Politically, obviously people are out on their summer breaks and their summer vacations, and maybe not everybody is as plugged in or tuned in as they normally would be. But, also in November, 3 days before Americans vote in our home province of Alberta, United Conservative Party members will gather in Red Deer. Shout out to Red Deer for their AGM. And part of that on the 2nd of November will be a leadership review vote. And this is obviously big for premiers, for party leaders, but for premiers in particular. The tail of the tape and past, and we got into this with Jeremy Farkas, former Calgary councillor who joined us just the day prior to this. So if you're listening to this live when we're doing it, that was on the 20th of August. We talked to Jeremy Farkas, former mayoral candidate as well, but I think perceived to be kind of the, one of the most conservative councillors down in Calgary at the time. Obviously, there were several, but Jeremy was probably the highest profile one, the rising star. He's been on an interesting political journey. He talked to us about the aftermath, so to speak, of losing that mayoral election in 2021 to Dr. Jody Gondek, the current mayor of Calgary. You and I were crunching the numbers yesterday. I mean, Jeremy Farkas, like Gondek had a strong election. I think about 176,000 votes for Gondek in the Calgary municipal election, but Farkas with about just under 120,000.
Yeah.
So no slouch.
Yeah.
Ran a strong campaign, and he talked to us about a whole lot, including sort of reinventing himself. Fascinating interview, and I encourage you to check it out. He spoke very frankly about that. I want to get to his observations on Danielle Smith and that leadership review, but real quick, when we asked Jeremy during that interview, and I think it was prompted by a question in our live chat, whether or not he was going to run for mayor in Calgary again next fall. And he said he hadn't yet made up his mind.
Yeah.
Did you buy it? Like, what did you pick up from him when we asked him that question?
I don't know, because Jeremy's kind of a guy who, I mean, he's very open, but like I couldn't get a read on him. But I do think if he ran today, he'd win.
Yeah, I think
it's hard.
chance.
I think it's hard to believe that he doesn't if things stay the same for Mayor Gondek in Calgary until that time. But definitely, if he ran today, I think he'd win.
He'd have a
a
good
very
chance.
close second last time would turn into a first place win.
Yeah, isn't it interesting that you could describe them as embattled mayors in Calgary and Edmonton? Both mayors Gondek and Sohi experiencing, what do you call it, popularity problems, I think, which is safe to say, which will have implications, I think, on the mayoral race. There's no guarantee that both or either incumbents will seek re-election. Neither has said that they won't. We've asked Mayor Gondek about that directly. I haven't asked Mayor Sohi point blank whether or not he's made up his mind, but I'd be curious to see. So Jeremy Farkas, as a conservative politician, small C conservative politician, he approaches provincial politics with an interesting lens, having had a ton of experience as a Calgary city councillor as well. And we asked him about the lead up to the leadership vote for Danielle Smith at that United Conservative AGM. The fall legislative session will kick off shortly before that. And we were curious to know what he thought we should expect to see from Alberta's premier ahead of that leadership vote. And here's what he told us.
Her position is relatively secure, but, many people smarter than I have said that about past premiers and been proven wrong. I think it'll come down to level setting expectations. It's interesting. I don't think that the premier's office has really telegraphed what they think the appropriate number would be at this point. I'm guessing it'd probably just 50% plus one, but I think with Ned Nenshi coming in at about that 86% mark, I think that's probably going to be that trouble zone. I think that they're going to be aiming for 86% or above. And if it's more than 50, but less than 86, I think it'll be uncomfortable, but a win is still a win.
Yeah, and so
there you go.
So we're talking to him yesterday, and I'm going, there's no way like 50% plus one would fly with anybody, and he kind of smirked. And I thought that it was interesting that he took that 86 number. That's the number that everybody's talking about with Nahid Nenshi's win as the Alberta NDP leader. And he's sort of saying for that reason, he thinks that 86 might be the number that they're looking to meet or beat Danielle Smith and her team. I want to reference, this is reporting, and this is from a while back. This is from when Jason Kenney resigned as Premier of Alberta. Interesting comment from Curtis in our live chat, by the way, as well, who says that he figures that Jeremy Farkas could have won that mayoral race had he gone full anti-arena. He says, but instead he went full Kenny. That from Curtis. Jeremy telling us yesterday that Jason Kenney didn't return his calls after he lost the election, which I thought was kind of interesting.
You never want to go full Kenny.
Nice reference. But this is some interesting insight into why numbers matter on leadership votes, leadership reviews, essentially. And again, the Canadian press released this, CTV News publishing it when Jason Kenney resigned a ways back, ultimately making way for Danielle Smith to come in and barely win that leadership vote and become Alberta's premier. But 51.4% was the result of Jason Kenney's leadership review. 51.4. I mean, if you bring a test home to your parents and you got 51.4, yeah, you passed.
Way to go, Timmy.
Yeah, you passed. But I don't know that they're thrilled. And that's when Kenney basically said that the result did not show enough support for him to stay on and he would step down so a new leader could be chosen. But these are the numbers, right? Like Ralph Klein, King Ralph. Maybe not the best premier in Alberta's history. This is a subjective judgment call. This is my obviously observation. Everyone will have different votes here, but I think Peter Lougheed is kind of seen as like the greatest premier in Alberta's history. But certainly Ralph Klein has been one of the more popular and one of the more polarizing and divisive politicians in Alberta's history. But in 2006, in March of 2006, he stepped down after garnering 55% in that leadership vote. What about Ed Stelmach? Ed Stelmach, 77% in his 2009 leadership review. But some caucus members were indicating at that time that there were problems in Paradise, that there was trouble in Paradise. In early 2011, he announced he would not seek re-election. Alison Redford had 77% party support. Right around the beginning of last decade. But of course, as we know, that leadership review soon became irrelevant because the travel expense story started to flare up, right? Now people were talking about Nelson Mandela's funeral and the $50,000 that it cost for her to attend that. And of course, the Sky Palace and everything else. Alison Redford resigning, making way for Dave Hancock at that point in 2014. And then, of course, there was Jim Prentice, who I don't think got to that leadership review stage because he lost an election in 2015 that a lot of people didn't see coming. They didn't see that result coming, and that was Jim Prentice's fate. So we look through the history at Alberta premiers. 70, high 70s doesn't guarantee your survival, but anything in the 50s, Klein, Kenney, and otherwise, anything in the 50s almost virtually guarantees an immediate resignation. And so you'd have to assume that Danielle Smith's team is looking at 80+% minimum. It's a story that we won't know until it happens, but this is something of interest, and I'm glad that Jeremy Farkas took the question from us yesterday.
Yeah, great show. If you want to go back and watch yesterday, just a great show with Jeremy, and I love it. He's always in the chat. I think he's in there right now.
Oh, is he?
But not to swerve on the off-ramp, but is Sky Palace still there? Is it just sitting all dolled up, doing nothing, or is it being utilized, that space?
Man, it's you'll remember.
I remember Kenny was up there, but
the Kenny
so
photo,
is it still kind of a social area and like?
Yeah, I mean they use it. The government use it. Listen, I've said this before. People are going to freak out
because nobody talks about it, obviously, because it's a buzzword.
Well,
right?
and everyone's like, people down there, like the geeks and nerds, and that's a compliment.
But
geeks
does Danielle use this area?
Well, I can't personally say that Danielle Smith is using it, but my guess is yes, the government uses it. The governing party uses it, and I mean it's obviously not called Sky Palace. That's not the actual name for it, but I've said this before, and I still stand by it. Like, and I've said this on the show, and we don't need to get back into this again, but it's not a bad idea. I think that this it sort of was like maybe not an anvil around Alison Redford's neck, but you could have like added it. It was like another barbell that sort of like continued to like drag her down under that sort of perception that people had of her entitlement. And once you have a reputation like that, it's tough to shake. I'll be curious to see if Danielle Smith can shake hers, like the hockey playoff story and all that kind of stuff, all the tickets, that's something that sort of like has calmed down right now. But I would expect that as MLAs get back into the Alberta legislature for the fall session, you're going to see that. You're going to see Nenshi and the NDP pick up on that again, because that's relatively perceived to be uncharacteristic for someone like Danielle Smith, who is the leader of the Wild Rose Party, who's supposed to be the fiscal conservative, who's supposed to believe in small government, right? That's why there was that issue. Back to the Sky Palace, I actually think that it makes perfect sense for an Alberta premier to have a residence in the capital city and for it to be on the grounds of the Alberta legislature, to be able to use it for entertaining, to be able to use it for governance. I don't think that there's anything particularly scandalous about that. I actually think that you could probably make an argument that it's efficient from a money standpoint, depending on, some of these housing allowances and travel expenses and all these types of things. I don't think it's a bad look. I've also said that I think that the province of Alberta should have maintained ownership of one of its planes. I don't think that it made sense for Alberta to sell all of its planes and then to have premiers chartering flights when they need to get around, or driving, spending 8 hours on the road to get from Lethbridge to Grand Prairie instead of quick flights. But again, it's optics, and it's what politicians choose to do to answer back to those optics. So the Sky Palace, yes, it still is there. Yes, the facility still gets used. I don't personally know what they're using it for right now. I don't think it's a bad idea. I think that when it came out that Alison Redford was allegedly asking the architect or the designers or her team was talking to the people that were, and they were sort of talking about like living quarters for a teenage girl, living quarters for, people started to say, well, she's custom renovating this place.
To like another condo, high-rise condo.
But also, for all intents and purposes, like, you look at Redford, look at what Pulkit was talking about with his mom as a surgeon and the family manager. Like, you want to draw more people to politics. You want to draw women to politics. You take a look at something like this. I just know we're freewheeling here. I know somebody's going to go, he's going to the wall for Alison Redford right now.
No.
I'm just saying, I don't think that
You're a big fan of entertaining spaces.
No, I'm a big fan of entertaining spaces. It is a problem. And this is getting into the weeds. So for those of you that remember that era of Alberta politics, I appreciate you rolling with me on this. But if you're lying on flight manifests, if you're saying that people were on chartered planes that weren't on the planes, right? Certain cabinet ministers, to justify taking those private planes with your family places, then there's an issue with that. That's obviously wrong. Right. But if a politician needs to make some decisions to make it more possible for them to have their family with them while they contribute to public service and also parent, I'm not sure that that's the worst thing in the world. In fact, we probably need to have a little bit more of that. So, you kind of wonder, like, there are politicians, a lot of them that seem to breeze by without sort of being hit with the criticism that they probably deserve. And then there are other politicians that just get hammered in the press, get hammered in public opinion. They get nailed to the floor. There are a couple key stories. Oftentimes, if you pair that with an effective opposition, like Danielle Smith was a voracious critic of Alison Redford back in the day, which is what makes her appointment, Smith appointing Redford to the board for Invest Alberta, that much more interesting. But Alison Redford just, she was screwed by the end. There was nothing she could do because once the public has that sense and they believe you to be a certain way, in her case, entitled, right, corrupt, people felt, then, stick a fork in it. It's tough to come back from that.
Well, I am also a big fan of entertaining spaces. You know that, Ryan. So I would just like to say to the current premier, Danielle Smith, anyone else using Sky Palace, future premiers like Nenshi, if you need a DJ for Sky Palace.
Oh, jeez. Listen to this. Going on the record, future premier like Nenshi. You think Nenshi, if Albertans were voting today, you think Nenshi would beat Redford?
I'm just playing the
Danielle
long
Smith?
game. I'm not making any assumptions. I'm just playing the long game here. For
Dwayne says Danielle Smith was leader of the Wild Rose Party, criticizing Rick McIver at the time for Sky Palace, and now both of them are in the UCP. Of course, McIver, a minister under Danielle Smith, which is, of course, right. And I appreciate this point from, who did I just see it from? Oh, my apologies. I think it was maybe Kimberly, but somebody basically said, the stuff that we're talking about with Alison Redford, said that wouldn't even make the news cycle right now. I mean, it probably would. I think it probably would.
I think the flights would, for sure.
The flight manifest story was pretty scandalous. The Nelson Mandela funeral one, $54,000 to go to a funeral. I mean, people have different feelings on that.
We had a similar thing with COP.
She paid it back, by the way. Alison Redford paid that back out of pocket.
Well, we had a similar, not similar, but kind of with the COP. Taking everyone out to COP with Danielle Smith. People weren't happy about that, and that was on the radar.
To the climate change
for a few weeks there,
conference.
Right?
Yeah.
But eventually it became, and people had different opinions on that as well. I felt like that was a little different. It's different than taking personal, flights everywhere. This was obviously a government, like she wanted the majority of government to come with her there. I get that. Have we seen the full flight manifest from that?
No.
On who went to COP? Because I'd be interested to see if they were all necessary Because wasn't it like 40 people or something
Well,
like that?
there was over 100 people,
over 100 people
in Alberta's delegation, but there was kind of like, I'm going off the top of my head on this, so go easy on me, but do you remember, like, we had correspondence from the Premier's office because we asked about it, and it kind of flared up into this thing on the show because I quoted the Premier's office, and I basically said the Premier's office is saying that their team was, I think off the top of my head, like 8 people. Their delegation was like 8, but Alberta was sending like about 100 or 120. But a lot of these people were going as affiliates of, you might call them like ABCs, agencies, boards, and commissions, some nonprofits, some sort of agencies and organizations that operate sort of at arm's length of government, economic development organizations. I don't want to start naming them because I don't know. I think like an example would be like Edmonton Global. I know for a fact that they sent some people to COP. That would be one example. But you might have different groups that are sending people from Alberta. Some of those groups may receive provincial funding and may receive federal funding as well. But the delegation that went to COP on behalf of Alberta, I think that on one hand, we were exploring the argument at that time. When was that? Like February, I think it was. Remember we talked
we did a few shows on it.
That was so good. We talked to, I think Naomi, who was it? Zipporah Berman joined us. I remember Sharon Morin joined us, an audience member. She was over there as an Indigenous knowledge keeper participating in that.
And those are the people I want to see going.
We had the full COP roundtable. And I think that, one of the positions that we explored on that was like, this is a good look or potentially a really good look for Alberta.
Sharon just said, I was there.
There she is. Oh, she's in the chat. Oh, what's up, Sharon? But we're saying like for a jurisdiction, Alberta, that's such a huge player in energy, but that also does have like a reputation. Alberta has a reputation it should be proud of, and Alberta also has, in some contexts, a problematic reputation. Like people kind of get the sense, based, I think, most especially on political saber rattling and some policy that Alberta or maybe even Canada hasn't taken environmental obligations seriously enough. And so I think that it's like a really good look to be at COP. But then on the flip side, we had feedback from people, and this is why we always appreciate your emails and your feedback with the show. You drive the conversation forward. People saying, listen, you don't deserve credit if you send like 80 or 90 or 100 people over there to sort of like fight against conventional wisdom on climate change, to speak, to sort of speak against what climate scientists are saying about, policy and steps that we need to take. So, obviously there's sort of like different ways to interpret that. But at the end of the day, it all comes back to, and one of the biggest complaints about that with people saying, well, what is this province spending on trips like this? People don't lose their minds over certain expenditures, and then they really lose their minds over others. You know what I'm saying? That's the funny thing about government spending. You can send 100 people to a climate change conference and it can be looked at as wasteful, and then you can run a highway to the middle of nowhere or spend $75 million on Turkish Tylenol, and all of a sudden it's just kind of one of those things that doesn't really land in the way you think it might. Sharon follows up in our chat and says, I did not go on the Alberta ticket either. In other words, she was not there on Alberta's dime, says Sharon, just to be clear. We appreciate that comment. I don't know. So we'll keep focused on that. We also talked to Jeremy Farkas about some of the other work that he's doing. Alberta, the province, looking at potentially breaking a promise to some pretty high-profile donors when it comes to ecological preservation. Calgary trying to figure out, and surrounding area, what it's going to do with future floods. We know that to be a reality across the country and in certain zones for sure, including Calgary. We've seen that in past. And if you missed our conversation, our interview with Jeremy Farkas, I encourage you to check it out. This show doesn't happen. I mean, speaking of flooding, I'm not even trying to be cute, without the support of partners of ours like Complete Care Restoration. And the fact of the matter is, I mean, I know all of us are watching what's happening in Jasper right now. And we're going to keep talking to you, by the way, about Jasper fundraisers and ways that you can support our fellow Canadians that were evacuated out of that mountain town. Many of them returning home this week to assess the damage and to see their properties for the very first time. The team at Complete Care Restoration is out there doing a lot of demolition right now, saving what they can. Smoke damage is a big way that they can help people get back into their homes, restoring those properties and rebuilding peace of mind. They'll be doing the full rebuilds as well. If you find yourself, your community in trouble after natural disaster and you want a company that you can trust, we recommend wholeheartedly Complete Care Restoration at completecarerestoration.ca. If this fall for you, not just for your kids, but for you as well, means back to school, you've always intended on doing, you've always meant to do it, and gosh darn it, now's the time. But you got all these challenges in the way. You're helping care for your parents. Your kids need you. Maybe you got a full-time job. Maybe you don't live anywhere close to a university. I want to encourage you to explore the AU Advantage. Athabasca University is Canada's open university. You can learn more about the admissions process, transfer credits, financial aid, and awards by visiting them online at athabascau.ca. That's where you can also learn more about their programs and courses, including an Athabasca University MBA. How's that for opportunity? Program and course offerings again at athabascau.ca. We got a big show coming up tomorrow, and I'm looking forward to this. As we wrap today, we wanted to let you know, Johnny and I have been working on a little something, and tomorrow we're going to roll it out. I think that this is going to be a lot of fun. So we want you to tell your friends, Real Talkers, this show is approaching its 1,000th episode. And ahead of that, Johnny and I were brainstorming, and we said, wouldn't it be fun to go back and take a look at the top 10 show-stopping statements, the top 10 moments in Real Talk history where the record scratched and where we all went, they said what? So coming up on the next episode of Real Talk, you're not going to want to miss the top 10.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jesperson, executive producer Josh Dunford, technical producer John Hicks, general manager